Happy Friday. Within week 2 of Lent, week 2 of our podcast series entitled Intentional, and all of this week we have entered into a conversation with each other about our hearts, especially in a time where God seems to not be answering our prayer on our timeline rather than His timeline. We began this week talking about some of the reasons why that might happen, and actually some of the beautiful things that we can hold on to about God's heart and our heart whenever it seems as if God is not answering our prayer. And yesterday we talked about the temptation that we might face to just give up altogether. And I mentioned yesterday that we need to do more in our spiritual life when we're struggling, or at least stay committed to the things that are working for us. And today I'd like to outline a few things that you might consider doing in your spiritual life whenever it seems like God is not answering your prayer, or specifically whenever you feel like you want to give up. And the two things I want to mention today are, number one, pray one psalm a day, and number two, find somebody who you can talk to. Let's unpack those two things together. The book of Psalms in the Old Testament, it's the story of the human heart, you might say. It's the poetry of the Bible. They are meant to be sung. The Psalms are songs. That's why when you go to Mass on Sunday or any day, the responsorial psalm is more like a song than it is a reading. There's a refrain. The leader says something, we all say something back. That's why at Mass on Sunday especially, parts of the responsorial psalm or the whole psalm itself is sung because they were written to be sung. It's the poetry of the human heart. There are 150 psalms that have been written that are in the Bible, and they describe almost every human situation. They describe the heart in almost every human situation. And if you're struggling to hear God, or if you're struggling for God to answer your prayer in your timeline, my encouragement to you is to pray one psalm a day. Start with Psalm 1, and then next day pray with Psalm 2. Some of those psalms are a little bit longer than others, so you may actually divide them up and read them half one day, half the next day, but you'll figure out your own rhythm. But one psalm a day is critical whenever you and I find ourselves struggling. It's a concrete thing that you can do whenever God is not answering your prayers on your timeline. Hearing the stories of how other people responded and what was in their heart whenever God was too slow can be a real source of encouragement and consolation. The second thing that you can do whenever you are struggling is to have somebody walking with you. We all need people in our life to walk with us on the journey. And if you find yourself in a season where God is not answering your prayer on your timeline, talk to someone. Have someone in your life who you can talk to about temptation, who you can talk to about your prayer, who you can talk to about all the feelings that you're experiencing whenever you're in the waiting. It's in those moments when we allow ourselves to be known by other people that we experience God with us through the people that we give ourselves permission to be known by. So praying one psalm a day, finding somebody you can talk to, two very concrete things that you can do in your spiritual life whenever it seems as if God is not answering our prayer on our timeline. It's important for us to do these things so that we don't get stuck in our spiritual life. And that's where we're going to go over the weekend. We're going to make a turn tomorrow and Sunday as we eventually get ready for Mass. Next week, we're going to talk about what do you do when you feel stuck in your spiritual life. And maybe you have been there, maybe you are there, or maybe you know someone who's there. But until we have that conversation about what it's like to be stuck in our spiritual life, let's celebrate what God is teaching us today. Pray one psalm a day. Tell someone that you know and that you love what's happening in your spiritual life. Until our conversation unfolds tomorrow in the podcast, let's start today. Pray with Psalm 1. It's in the Old Testament. Start slow. Let the Lord speak to you in that psalm and in the reading of the Bible, as well as in our conversation which unfolds tomorrow. God bless you.